Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me and being fashionably late, as they say. This evening, I thought it would be interesting to look at a topic, but look at it in three different ways. Questions that come up a lot on my channel when it comes to things like healing from narcissistic abuse, having been in difficult, toxic relationships, family environments, cult like dynamics, and so on. There's three different questions that would commonly come up. Things like, what does healing actually look like? What does it take? What is it you need to do? Okay. So what does it take to heal from narcissistic abuse? Another question would be, what does it look like? How do you know? Do you ever get back to being the person you were? That can be a common theme with that question in particular. Just wanting to be the way things were before we had to go through what we were going through, feeling as if we've lost parts of ourselves. And the last question is, how long does it take? How long does healing from narcissistic abuse take? So I thought it would be interesting to address those three different questions. And I have talked previously before on a live stream about looking at some of the little things that we miss that might show that we're moving forward, show that we are healing. So I thought it would be interesting to maybe look at it slightly differently from those three angles. So first of all, what does it take? What is it you need to do? If you've been psychologically, emotionally manipulated, abused, taken for granted, ignored, all of the different things that go on in narcissistic relationships. You've had your whole sense of reality rewritten for you. It's like they're trying to reprogram you somehow. Well, the first thing is to make sense of what happened. Okay. It's when people go on to channels like mine, they're watching videos about the different motivations, the different characteristics, the traits, and the reasons behind uh, narcissistic behaviors. What is it drives them, and so on. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It is good to educate yourself to maybe get a better understanding of the kind of person that you might have been involved with. But also making sense of some of our own reactions as well, the things that we did to try to make things better, to try to maybe reason with them, to try to reach them, to try to be heard, to try to be understood. The number of times we might have given chances, just chance after chance, in the hope that this time things were going to change. So it's not always just about looking at the narcissistic person. And this is where therapy can come in helpful. It's looking at some of our own motivations. Quite commonly in narcissistic relationships, I'd say any kind of environment where there are narcissistic people, what happens is we tend to get sold a fantasy. We tend to get sold a lie, if you will. We fall for a version of someone, and we both engage in this fantasy about how everything is going to be wonderful. But what tends to happen is there are these little minor rejections, these little minor pulling away, abandonments, things like that. Little things like that happen over a period of time, and we don't always notice them at first. One again, another common question comes up is, why didn't I see the warning signs? Why didn't I see the red flags? Because a lot of the times they were subtle and they were kind of normalized. They were made it look as if they weren't actually doing anything wrong, that maybe you were the problem, you had done or said something wrong. So it's understanding and making sense of the nature of the dynamic that was going on, not just what motivates them, but the stuff that was going on with us as well. It also takes, I always like to quote Jay Reid on this, learning to live in defiance of their narrative. Okay. You couldn't do something because you were too stupid. You couldn't make decisions for yourself because you'll always make the wrong choice. You shouldn't try new things, all of that sort of stuff. So it can take living in defiance. It's starting to do little things for yourself. But the whole time it's recognizing that it can be difficult. What it takes is, I believe, intent. Okay. When we feel pain, we often want the pain to go away. We look for many different reasons, many different ways that we can avoid the pain. Some people play video games, some people will drink, some people will eat cake, some people will go to the gym. There's lots of different things people do. I wouldn't say there's anything inherently wrong with what we do as long as it isn't too unhealthy. But the thing is, it's like anything, whenever we're trying to avoid pain, the very things we do can often be the very things that make it worse. Okay? Either that or it keeps it going. And when we want that quick, easy route, sometimes it's accepting that there are no magic words that can undo the pain that was caused. There's no combination of words can undo what happened that can suddenly make that narcissistic person realize, damn, it was me all along, and maybe I better go and apologize. It's if you will, it's learning to manage our expectations on ourselves and on them as well. If they would not change, if they would not listen, if they would not hear your pleas the whole way through that relationship, why do you think they're going to listen? Why do you think they're suddenly going to change now that you're apart? They're doing the same thing. They're probably just doing it with someone else. Either that or they're doing it alone, desperately looking for someone who's maybe going to worship them or something. So it's recognizing that they're not going to change. It's also recognizing that our healing is not going to happen immediately. It's not going to be a quick fix. So I often say it's a journey. It's not a sprint to a finish line. It's also recognizing that a lot of the time we had been psychologically conditioned to respond and to react to certain stimuli, just like Pavlov and his dogs. We were, every time we got a sour look, every time somebody would they would withdraw, give us a silent treatment, we would be wondering, what can I do to fix this? What can I, so we have to recognize there are little things still going on with us. So it's learning to recognize those triggers, because sometimes even after the situation, someone could do something, could say something, and we could feel as if we're right back in that situation. Okay. So it's recognizing that we had been conditioned, we're being brainwashed. It's learning to recognize those triggers and finding ways to disarm them. Okay. Something else that could be very useful is to try to either minimize the contact or at least create some kind of distance, whether that's physical distance, that could be no contact, it could be emotional distance, psychological distance. But really what you're trying to do is you're trying to minimize and control any contact that you need to have. Because the thing is, it's very difficult to heal in an environment that's been hurting you. Okay. Sometimes the most we can ever do is learn to manage ourselves. Okay. But we're not necessarily going to heal if that situation, that environment is ongoing. So it's maybe trying to create some kind of distance. And if it's not physical distance, emotional, psychological distance. The other thing we need are other people. Okay. Therapy is a good place to start. Telling your story to a therapist, someone who's going to get it, someone who's going to listen to you, someone who's going to validate you, someone who's going to work collaboratively with you to try to find a way through and a way forward. Also mixing with other people who get it, who understand you, not necessarily other people who have been in narcissistic relationships, but people who care about you, people who like you, people who want to see the best in you, bring out the best in you, people you feel safe and comfortable with. I've said it so many times, the antidote to toxic people are decent people. Okay. So it's mixing with people like that. Things like online forums. I'm always careful when I say this, because the danger is we can end up in an echo chamber where people are trying to outdo each other with their stories. Online forums where people encourage and support each other. They might share their story. It is good to share your story. It's a good way of normalizing things with each other. But also sharing ideas, what's been useful, what's been helpful, what you struggled with, how you overcame it. Stories like that, things like that are very, very useful. People who will encourage you because they get it. Maybe they've been through it too. Sometimes we have to acknowledge, when I mentioned earlier on about how I just want to go back to the way I was. I want to go back to the way things were. Sometimes we have to recognize maybe we'll have to let parts of us go, certain parts of us. The parts of us that may be invested in that fantasy, the parts of us that were lied to, that were hurt, the parts of us that are still maybe holding on to the hope that sooner or later they might just notice us, they might just recognize us, they might just apologize, things like that. Letting go of something can be one of the most difficult things we'll ever do. That's why I say things like therapy and supportive people can really help. It can be one of the most difficult things we'll ever do, but it can also be one of the most liberating. Okay. And when we let maybe those parts of us go, it's not that we're actually losing anything. I would suggest that the other parts of us start to become a bit stronger. They start to become more galvanized, more consolidated. Okay. So we don't actually become smaller as such. What we're losing sometimes, it's like a ball and chain. We're losing the ball and chain, the thing that has been holding us back, keeping us maybe enmeshed in whatever fantasy that they had created. Something else, and this is something you would look at in therapy with a therapist. This is the thing about trauma. What we cannot do is we cannot undo trauma. Okay, we cannot change what happened. What we do with trauma is, and there are different ways, there's many different approaches, different therapeutic approaches. We learn to integrate what happened into our experience. Okay, doesn't mean it didn't hurt, doesn't mean it wasn't fair, doesn't mean any of those things. But when we do that, it can be the difference between things like rumination, getting flashbacks, and so on. If we're going to think about it, it's because we're choosing to. And we're doing it from a sense of control, if you will. It's been a very deeply unpleasant experience, but it's not dictating our lives. I like to think of it as it's the difference between voluntary and involuntary recall. Okay. Again, I could go into probably do a full live stream on that alone, but that's something that you'll be working with a therapist to try to integrate into your experience the things that happen, being able to make sense of things that don't make sense, that are way out of our frame of reference, way out of our experience. Our normal ways of coping and dealing with the world did not work. Okay. Also, and I think this is the big thing, because this is curious, if you were in a narcissistic relationship, on one hand, they infantilized you, they treated you like a child, they knew best. Again, you couldn't make your own decisions, not without running them by them first, you know. They always knew better than you. Anything you did was wrong, bad, stupid, or whatever. So in some ways, they infantilized you, but at the same time, they also made you into like their parent. You were responsible for how they felt. You were responsible for their actions. You were responsible for keeping them happy. You were responsible for fill in the blank. So on one hand, they're treating you like a child, while at the same time expecting you to be their parent. And it's a very strange kind of dynamic to have with a narcissistic person. And actually, just as I'm saying that, I don't think that's a topic that's been covered much. So I might actually make a video about that. It's the way my mind wanders, things just pop into it. But whatever it is you do, when it comes to moving forward, when it comes to healing, there has to be intent. Okay. We have to do something with intention. Okay. It's what is the aim? What is the goal here? It is to move forward. It is to have a better life. It is to find happiness, to find love, to find success, whatever it is. You want to get fit, you want to get healthy, you go to the gym with intent. Okay. You don't just turn up and expect the machines to do things and you start building muscle or losing weight or whatever. There has to be intent. Okay. There has to be effort. And sometimes that effort might be difficult. It might be painful, but again, with the right kind of people around you, it can be easier. Okay. You don't necessarily have to face these things alone. So that is just a summary of what you might need to do in order to recover from narcissistic abuse. I'd say there's a lot more that I could go into there. But moving on to what would recovery look like? Okay. How does someone know whenever they're recovered? Well, first of all, it's going to look different for different people. Go back to what I was saying a moment ago. You do it with intent. What is it you're actually doing? Again, do you want to move forward in life? Do you want a new partner, someone who's decent, someone who loves you? Do you want a better job? Do you want to learn new skills? Recovery is going to look different for different people, okay? I would say that recovery, when you've maybe let go of that ball and chain, the parts of you that have been holding you back, when you start to understand the nature of the relationship, the fantasy that they were selling you, that we all bought into, maybe you start recognizing they were just selling you snake oil, okay? And they were selling that same snake oil to pretty much anyone who would listen. That's just who they are. That's what they do, okay? When we realize that, maybe we stop trying to figure them out. We stop worrying about them rejecting us. We don't fear them anymore. We don't fear their silent treatment. We don't think of them maybe 100 miles away in another house, thinking that they might be thinking about us, because chances are they're not. They're focused on whoever's giving them a supply right now. You might pop into their head once in a while, and that could be for various reasons. But it's really, they're just going to be focusing on who's giving them narcissistic supply at the moment. For some people, recovery kind of looks like that person is a memory, no more than that. Okay, an unpleasant memory, an uncomfortable memory, but that's all they are. Like when I said earlier on about when we integrate into our experience the awful things that have happened to us, they are still memories. The memories don't go away, but we might be looking at them differently. Um, so that person might pop into your head once in a while. You might even remember the way they behaved, the things they said. You might even remember how you behaved to try to maybe reason with them, whatever. But again, you recognize them as just selling snake oil, okay? They are incapable of anything other than maybe a surface level discussion, okay? So when that happens, they're not really taking up space in your head anymore. They're not taking up space in your life. You're not wondering about them. You're not having a look on social media to see what they're doing, where they are. You might be curious, don't get me wrong, nothing wrong with that. Lots of people are curious about their ex-partners, wondering what they look now and what they're up to, things like that. It's perfectly normal. I like it whenever we get to the point. Some people think that indifference is a good strategy to use in their recovery, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I like to think of indifference as being an outcome of recovery. It gets to the point where you really just don't care. Now, you don't necessarily want anything bad to happen to them. You might even still hope that they get the help that you think they need. Chances are they won't. Remember, narcissistic people, they rarely go to therapy. And if they do, it's only because of an immediate crisis. Once the crisis passes, they don't need therapy anymore. And that's generally how it goes. I know I'm being very general. It's not true in every single case, but typically, because they think they're fine. The fault always lies outside of them. So if the fault lies outside of them, then that's where the solution lies as well. They don't need to do any work. They think they're fine. It's other people have to do the work. So you don't necessarily want anything bad to happen to them, but you don't really care if anything good happens to them either. You're just indifferent. Someone might even tell you they bumped into them the other day, and you might have a mild curiosity, but other than that, you probably don't care. What you're not going to do is you're not going to be asking for information. What are they doing? What did they say? But then you're not going to say, I don't care. Whatever it is, you're just indifferent. Okay. So I think indifference can be a good sign of an outcome of recovery. But like I say, you don't hear them anymore. You don't hold on to their shame anymore. In that relationship, where you get the term scapegoat, you get blamed on everything. You're asked to carry all their shame for them. Everything that goes wrong, you're responsible for all their misery. You're not their scapegoat anymore. Even when you hear their name or you see a picture of them, sometimes we get that, even a physical reaction. It feels as if we're right back there. We don't feel that anymore because you're not their scapegoat. Okay? They are nothing. They're off selling snake oil to someone else. Okay? What you also recognize is your recovery did not depend on them. Okay? You didn't need their permission to move forward in life. You didn't need, as much as you would have liked it, you didn't need their apology. You didn't need their acknowledgement. You would have liked it, but you accept that it's not coming because, again, they did not, in their minds, they did nothing wrong. It was all you. Okay? You have no interest in getting even either. As much as it can hurt, we want some kind of revenge, some kind of justice. You have no interest in getting even. Not anymore. In the early days, something like a revenge fantasy. I can be careful how I say this because it's always with balance. A revenge fantasy can be very corrosive, and it's almost it's like an expression I heard once. It's like drinking poison and hoping that they get sick. Okay, so that's the toxic side of it. That's where it can actually hold us back. It's not so useful. But what it can do, something useful, is it can motivate you. Remember what I said about doing something with intent? Well, maybe the revenge fantasy isn't you going and ruining their life or exposing them for what they are. It could be something like, I'm going to show them. I'm going to show them that I'm not stupid. I'm going to show them that I'm not useless. Now, in reality, they don't care. Okay? Unless whatever it is has something to do with them, or they really don't care. They might feel a minor narcissistic wound because you suddenly feel good about something or you've accomplished something. But chances are they're just going to dismiss it as irrelevant because it means nothing to them. As far as they're concerned, anyone could do that. It's not a big deal. So it can be useful to help motivate us to do things with intent. It's not so helpful whenever we hold on to that. That's our actual purpose in life, if you will, to try to show them something. Because really, they don't care. Honestly, they don't. What you can do, even with that, and you start to find a bit of momentum, you recognize that your idea of some kind of revenge or some kind of justice or trying to show them that you're not stupid and you are capable of whatever, you start to recognize what you really want is for them to desperately notice you. You just want them to see you. The whole time in that relationship, you remember they're only surface level narcissistic relationships. You want them to see you for who you really are. You wanted them to see your love. You wanted them to see your pain. You wanted them to see all these different things. They either couldn't or they didn't care. So when you recognize it doesn't matter what you do, you could win the lottery. You know, you've got a ticket for 10 million. You're on your way to cash it in. All you're going to get from them is a bit of envy, a bit of ridicule, a bit of scorn, whatever it is. Oh, you might have them try to weasel their way back into your life or whatever, but other than that, no, doesn't matter what you do. They're not going to notice you unless it's something that impacts them personally. Okay. And if you're apart, chances are they've moved on, they've got a new supply. So when you recognize that need you had for them to notice you, that could be something that you've let go. That could have been that ball and chain that you were wearing. You don't need them to see you because they're not. And again, going back to the indifference, they're not that important. It doesn't matter whether they see you or not. You decide for yourself that you want a better life. You decide for yourself that you're going to succeed at something. You're going to at least give something a try. That could be learning a new skill, enrolling in a class, going for a promotion, maybe starting your own business. It could be, it doesn't matter what it is, writing a book, starting a YouTube channel, doesn't matter what it is. You're doing it for you. And you can measure your own success. You don't need them to tell you whether or not you've done a good job at it. You might even tell yourself, I'm going to meet someone nice. I'm going to meet someone decent. Whether that's a romantic thing or not, that's entirely up to you. but you're going to look for decent people. Remember what I said, if they didn't care about you and they didn't see you in the relationship, why do you think they're going to see you now that you're gone? Okay. So what it can look like as well is whenever they are no longer the focus in your life, because you can see beyond them. Okay. You can see the bigger picture. You can see the joy in your life. You can see the success in your life. You don't feel bad. You actually feel good whenever you bring out the best in other people, because with decent people, they tend to do the same with you. So you see a lot of mutuality going on. I'm trying to find the right words here. I don't have waffle. Hold on, let me get a quick drink. Better way of phrasing it. The kindness, the decency, the support is reciprocated, along with the respect and things like that. It's reciprocal. Okay. That narcissistic person either wasn't capable or didn't want to give you any of that. You're no longer looking for it. You're no longer dependent on it, because they just don't matter. Now, moving on to the last question. How long does recovery take? Well, how long is a piece of string? Okay. It really depends on the person, their personal experiences, the nature of the abuse. How long did it last? Was it maybe in the family of origin? Was it in a workplace? Was it in some cult-like movement? Was it in a marriage or something? Was it in a long-term romantic relationship? It can depend on a lot of different things. Each and every person is unique, okay? I think it also depends on their support network. Again, decent people, good people, having a good therapist. And I think it takes as long as it has to. All right? It takes as long as it has to. Again, we want the quick and easy path. I was almost going to sound like Yoda there, warning about the quick and easy path. There is no shortcut to recovery. That being said, I don't think we necessarily have to make things too difficult for ourselves. We let it take as long as it has to, and we don't necessarily measure it the way we would measure other things, because sometimes it's not a linear journey. Sometimes we have to take a step back in order to be able to move forward, or a step to the side to be able to move forward. Sometimes we even have to change direction. Okay. So recognize it's a journey, it's not a race. And looking at some of the points I raised earlier, sometimes we get to the point where the past is informing us. It's not making decisions for us. It's not dictating what we do next. When we have integrated our trauma, if you will, into our experience, even though it was deeply unpleasant, when we don't do that, I'll say this the other way around. When we don't do that, every time we're triggered, it can feel like we're right back in that situation, maybe with that person or those people. It can feel like yesterday's threat is present today. When we've done a bit of work on ourselves, when we have addressed our trauma, when we've found better understanding with ourselves, a relationship with ourselves as much as with the world around us and so on, the next time we're triggered, we might not leap straight into survival mode. That trigger has only reminded us that this looks familiar. Doesn't mean it is the same. It just looks familiar because it feels familiar. And we can be a bit more cautious, a bit more wary. By then, again, in things like therapy and so on, and working with people that care about us, we've become a bit better at managing our boundaries. We've become a bit better at recognizing when someone is maybe trying to push a button or pull a string to try and get a reaction. Maybe by then, I like to say what we do is we give people their own work to do. Okay, we don't start defending ourselves. We can give an account, of course. We can give an explanation if we need to, but what we don't do is we don't try to reason with someone who has set out to be unreasonable. No. I like to put it this way. I said this, I think, on a video, or was it a live stream? I can't remember. But it's all stuck with me because it sounded quite intelligent for me, so I was quite proud of myself. What we don't do is we don't start explaining why our boundaries are important. We ask them to explain why they think they're not. Okay? That can be a good sign of recovery. We're not going back to that place. We're not going to be treated the same way because we have learned we are not abusive. We're not aggressive. Sorry about that. That's supposed to be on silent. Where did I get to? Yeah, we're not being aggressive. We're not even being passive aggressive. We're being assertive. Okay. One day, and this is the thing, if we're not paying attention, and this is not necessarily a bad thing, but one day you might hear something or you might see something that reminds you of that situation you're in or even that person. And it just might cross your mind that you hadn't thought about them in a long time and you hadn't even noticed because you were more focused on your current life. You were more focused on the future life that you were interested in. You're more focused on the people around you that you care about and that care about you. And you just realize you hadn't thought about them. It might have, even if it was only for a week, 2 weeks, maybe a month, you hadn't been keeping track. And I think that's a good sign. It's not that we ever forget, going back to what I was saying earlier, when they do pop into our head, we acknowledge it. It is what it is. It's a memory. We can let it go. We don't push it away. We don't try and avoid it. We can just let it go and go back to focusing on what we're doing. And if we do think about it, it's because we're choosing to. We're not getting flashbacks. We're not having nightmares. We're not ruminating excessively, replaying different situations over and over again. What if I'd said this? What if I'd done that? No, they just pop into your head and then they go as quickly as they came. And I think when you get to that point, whether that's a month, a year, 5 years, there's no time limit. Everybody's different. What you do is you realize you're living for you and you're living for the people that you love. You're not living hoping that some snake oil person is suddenly going to recognize reality. Okay. So I hope you find that interesting. I will be taking questions in a moment, but it's looking at, again, those three common questions that came up, and I hope I answered them. I could probably do a full live stream on each one of them. What does it take? What is it we need to do in order to recover from narcissistic abuse? What does that actually look like? Okay. And the last one was, how long does it take? Yeah, I think I covered most of that. Probably waffled more than usual. But anyway, going to go back and I'm going to see if I can open up some questions. And where are we? Pop out chat, because this is so much easier to read. Okay, so let's get back to the beginning. Hello, Tim. Understanding they're dysfunctional. Yeah, recognizing that it is a dysfunction. This is a difference. I think this is interesting. I've been thinking about this recently. The difference between a disorder and a personality disorder. With something like a disorder, something like, say, obsessive compulsive disorder, the person knows that it's bringing up a lot of distress. They know that it's difficult for them. They know that it's causing them a lot of grief. They know that there are a lot of dysfunctions in their life, constantly checking, rechecking things, safety seeking behaviors. So when it comes to a disorder, even an anxiety disorder, people know that it's not healthy. It is having a detrimental effect on them. The difference with a personality disorder, I'm not going to say all of them because that would sound too broad, but specifically with narcissistic personality, even the cluster Bs, largely with a personality disorder, the person thinks it's normal. It's everybody else that has the problem. That's why when you think of a disorder, particular personality disorder, I always look at it as the impact it has on someone's day-to-day functioning, but also the impact it has on their relationship, not just with themselves, but with other people. Not just how they view themselves, but how they view other people as well. Okay. And for someone with a personality disorder, a lot of this, it seems normal. It's everybody else who has the problem. So it's recognizing that they are dysfunctional. Narcissism is a lot of different things. But what I've heard a few people refer to it as, and I think it's a good way of looking at it, it's a rejection of reality. It is a rejection of fact. Okay. If it doesn't fit their narrative, it just, it gets rejected. The defense mechanisms kick in. What's pots and pans is asking. I would like a video about that. I cannot find any questions that came before that, so I'm not quite sure what it is I was talking about. What's pots and pans? If you leave a wee note message what that video you're requesting is about, it'll give me an idea. Sharon is saying, oh goodness, I never want to go back. Yeah, Sharon, why would you? A lot of people do go back. I'm not going to criticize them. I'm not going to say they're doing anything wrong, but a lot of people do go back because maybe there's part of them is still enmeshed, part of them is still caught in that trauma bond. They're still hooked to that. This time, maybe it's going to be different. This time, it's going to be better because they promised me this time, or maybe they're in real distress. Remember what I said about how they turn you into a parent. Well, they're in real distress. My leaving them has caused them such great anxiety. I'd better there, all these terrible things are going to happen. They don't know how to function without me because you've been parentified. Okay. So people do end up sometimes going back. I wouldn't criticize them for it. But think about what I was saying. If they would not change the whole time you were there, why do you think they're going to change once you've gone? Okay. It's not that they've learned their lesson or anything. I often say they've just maybe found a different way of doing the same thing to reel you back in. Okay, where did we get to? Oh, Amanda's saying that is spot on. Infantilizing you and needing me to parent. So fucked up. Yeah, you're right. Okay, what's pots and pans? That's it. That was the video. I've just realized that's what it was. Looking at how they infantilize you and parentify you at the same time. I think that would be an interesting topic. They treat you like they know better than you, and yet they expect you to look after them. It's real sort of on its head kind of logic. But think about what I was saying, rejection of reality. Okay. My angel life. I know I sound cynical, but I've given up. Society has taken a nosedive. I never meet decent people. It's further compounded my beliefs. I can't get there or even be around anyone. I can't. My angel Alfie. Sorry, I thought I said angel life. I can't disagree with you because I don't know what your experience is, and sometimes I find it hard to be around people, but that's only because I wouldn't say I'm shy. I'm kind of introverted, despite what you see. I can be extroverted sometimes, can be a bit of a show off, but that is really all it is. It's a show. Sometimes I find people hard to be around, but we all do need people because we're social creatures. Thing is, with decent people, it's not that they don't exist. Sometimes they're hard to find because sometimes they don't like putting themselves out there. They might be quiet. They might be introverted themselves. I think what you find is you have a lot of people who will talk about the amazing, great work they do, how kind they are. They do so much for charity, and they want to help this person with this, and they want to help that person with that. I think where you meet authenticity is when you see people do these things, but they don't mention it. They don't particularly want to talk about it. It's none of anybody's business. They just do it. Those people might be hard to find, but they do exist. They are right there. Even if you go onto something like an online forum, you get a lot of people, very decent people, sharing their stories, trying to give advice. maybe for every 100 you might find one troll who's just there for attention, you know. And so it sometimes it only takes one bad apple to spoil the whole damn thing. But that doesn't mean there aren't good people and decent people out there. How do you know, for instance, there isn't someone very close to you at the minute? You might pass them on the street every day. They might be thinking the same thing. Okay. We just don't know. I would say take time to get to know people. Maybe take time to get to know people. Don't forget, sometimes someone could just have a bad day. Where you see a repeated pattern of behavior, that's different. And let them get to know you as well. That's entirely up to you, though. I think it means taking a risk. But the thing about taking a risk is you have to risk failing. That's the difficulty sometimes. I go off on too many tangents. Sorry about that. Okay, where we get to. Sharon is saying, best lesson, go forth on a journey of self-discovery and not give a crap about what other people think. They're not the experts in what path they accept for themselves. Yeah, you are the expert on you. Other people can give you feedback. They can give you honest feedback. They can give you constructive criticism. They can give you praise. But you are the expert on you. Okay. Hello, Dr. Suzanne. She's asking, do you agree with something I've read and feel is true? That it can take 18 months to recover due to the havoc on the nervous system. Seemed true for me in one case, but in the recent it didn't. It's the thing about trauma. I'm just going to talk about trauma. When we experience something deeply traumatic, now let's imagine something scary like a car accident. We can experience for somewhere between maybe 4, maybe 8 weeks, something like that. We experience different things. For instance, maybe we've lost our appetite, our sleep is disrupted. We might be a bit more irritable than we would normally be. For that period of time, it's like we just will not suffer fools. There can be different little things going on with us. We might find ourselves very vigilant. You know, whenever we're driving the car, we're not going to drive more than 30 miles an hour, and we're watching every other car on the road. So those things happen whenever we experience something traumatic. And what usually happens is, as we do this naturally, as we start to integrate that into our experience, we start to settle down, usually somewhere between 4 to 8 weeks, and we start to find a new level, and we go back pretty much to normal. When something is really deeply life-threatening, maybe that's something different, okay? It's not just a car accident in the sense that someone went into the back of us, broke our number plate or something. No, it could be, you know, maybe almost life-threatening. They had to cut us out of it or whatever. It depends on the situation. It depends on the threat. It depends on the danger. It depends on our own inner resources, our own experiences, resilience, support network. But then there's another dynamic to it, and that's whenever something is, it's not just a one-off event, it's a long, prolonged period of time where it might not just be the same thing that's happening, but it's the same kind of thing. Constant devaluation, constant threats, constant rejection, constant betrayal. That's when we go into the realms of complex trauma, okay? Because it's not just a one-off event, it's a series of events, and it's over a long period of time. That's not like the car accident, when for that period of time we start to adjust and we get back to normal, because this thing is ongoing. So we're left in maybe a state of hypervigilance. Now, coming out of a situation like that, again, a lot of the behaviors stay with us, the hypervigilance, the rumination, and so on. So I'm not sure about the 18 months. I'm not going to disagree with it, because I'm not sure who read the article, and chances are they're on a higher pay grade than I am. So I'm not going to disagree with it. Maybe it can take up to that amount of time, because when it's something complex, depends on your approach. Some people are looking at managing the symptoms and then dealing with the trauma. Sometimes it is actually dealing with the trauma. Sometimes it could even be, maybe EMDR, or it could be psychoanalytical work. There's a lot of different stuff could go on. So it might take 18 months. Who knows? What I would say is, for the recent case, it didn't. Whatever happened in that recent case, it could well have been a one-off, or it could have been maybe something was beginning to happen. You started to recognize it. If you had done work previously and you started to recognize this, it could be that you're a bit more assertive with your boundaries. It could be that I wouldn't say you're ready for it, but you feel a bit more courageous to maybe deal with it. There could be different things going on there, but if you had done work to recover previously, when you get into that new situation, you might have felt a bit stronger to be able to deal with it. So, not sure if that answers your question, but I think that would be that might be could be one of the explanations. So where do we get to? I'm checking. Yeah, Tim says it's taken years to recover properly. It depends on how far you want to go. But even think of the term properly. What does proper look like? Because I can't tell you what that is. Only you can discern what that means. Pay attention, as say, if we don't pay attention to the little subtle changes along the way, and the steps that we have taken, sometimes we can feel as if we've still got that ball and chain around our ankles, and we're forgetting that maybe we're in a better job now, or we're in a new environment, or we have a new partner who's nice, or there could be a lot of different things if we're not paying attention to those little things. Where do we get to? Let me see. Where do we go? Looking for something with a question. Oh, Dr. Suzanne says again about agreeing with indifference. I hadn't thought of indifference as an outcome. Some people find indifference useful in the recovery. I would say it's more looking at maybe stoicism. I think stoicism can be a useful, I don't think it's pretty good as a way of life, but it can be useful in your approach to recovery, to be able to look at things maybe from an objective level and so on. But I think the outcome is indifference. You really don't care. You're done. And I put a video out a couple of weeks ago there, I think it was, and I was really it's my bravest thumbnail ever. Yeah, I just called it "No More Fucks to Give." I think when we get to that point, yeah, I think that's real indifference. Where do we get to? Me on YouTube. Care more about your life than about them. Yeah. Make yourself the protagonist in your own story, not the supporting cast member in someone else's, okay? Or a walk-on extra, non-speaking part in someone else's. Be the protagonist in your own life. Absolutely. Where do we get to? Oh, me on YouTube saying again, if you focus on their life, who focuses on yours? Yeah, don't take your eye off your own goals, your own life. So where did we get to? Looking for questions. This is interesting when I see the little crowns with the numbers on it again, because sometimes they stand out a bit more. And I'm just a visual person and I do waffle too much. Let me see. Where do we get to? Logic's fine. It's the best revenge. It's not living better. The best revenge is not needing or wanting revenge at all. When they reach perfect stranger status, don't wish ill will. Have zero concern for them at all. Yeah. You take no pleasure in anything bad that happens to them. None whatsoever. But you do not feel any bitterness towards their happiness, because They sell snake oil. That's all they do. Where we go? Just the thing, it's very hard sometimes. I feel like I'm jumping into someone's conversation here and people talk to each other. I do like the way you guys talk to each other, the way you share stuff with each other. It's pretty good. I like that. I keep getting asked if I would open some kind of forum or something, and I've no idea how I would do that. And even if I did, I'm not sure how I would moderate it. But it is something I'm looking into because I'm trying to get a new website. My website at the moment is just Sentient Counseling, where I do all my work. But I'm trying to get a website with just my name and so the person I have looking at it for me. I did ask, is there something you could do that people could just log into that and they can have a chat and so on? But I would need someone to moderate it. I was going to ask Freud, but he's a dog and he can't read, he can't type either. So, but it is something I have been thinking about because a few people have asked about that, and I think that having something kind of forum, um, it's just I'm thinking about it when I see the conversations and the chats during the live streams. I think it's pretty. I think it's pretty good. Good idea. I think Jay Reed has one on Facebook. Let me see. I think Richard Grannon has one, but I think it's on his website. Um, I might be wrong. I think people like. Oh, I know who does. Sarah Davison. She calls herself the divorce coach. She has a channel on YouTube and a podcast. She has forums and stuff for people that have come out of narcissistically or narcissistic relationships and so on. She has online groups and forums, very supportive, very well moderated as well, from what I can gather. I'm not sure if Dr. Romani does. I really don't know. I know she does a course of some kind that she offers. And let me see. Dr. Carter, Les Carter, I think he might do something as well. I'm not sure. It's been a long time from I've watched any narcissism videos, to be honest. I actually watch old comedy from when I was a kid, music and stuff like that. But yeah, I think those people would have forums, but Sarah Davison definitely does, and so does Jay Reed. His is on Facebook, if I can remember correctly. But yeah, I was thinking of maybe doing something like that. Difficulty would be for me, I couldn't be on it full time moderating it, but I think it would be useful for people to share information and so on. But anyway, yeah, sorry, I get distracted again. It's just I like how you guys chat with each other and give your stories and give ideas and so on. You'll never get the closure, admission of guilt, or acceptance of your healing you desire. When you are holding out for that, when you want that other person to apologize, you want them to acknowledge what they did, you want them to hear. Remember, in the relationship, you yearned for them to see you, to hear you, to acknowledge your pain, to share in your happiness and your joy. You wanted desperately to be seen. When we come out of that, we still want that, even if it's to get the apology, even if it's to get some kind of justice or revenge or whatever, even if it's for them to be exposed for what they really are, whatever it is, we want some kind of acknowledgement. When we do that, we are handing our power over to them. Okay? You're making your recovery dependent on them. So even though you might be apart, you might not even see each other anymore because you might have even went no contact. They still have the power over how you feel and what it is you're doing. And that's not pleasant. That's one of the things that keeps us stuck. Okay. As I say, we acknowledge that they reject reality, they reject the truth, they cannot take responsibility. They will, okay, I'll put it to you this way, trying to reason with them, trying to pin them down on something and acknowledge something, trying to get some kind of acknowledgement, whatever it is. Try to imagine grabbing an eel with your elbows. Okay? Good luck with that. That's what it is. And sometimes that's what it's like when we are waiting for them to do, say, give us something, some kind of acknowledgement, some kind of apology, some kind of, we're trying to grab an eel with our elbows. That ain't going to go well. You're going to get done with that before the eel does. Okay. So yeah, sometimes we just have to learn to let them go. We focus on ourselves. We focus on the good stuff in our life. We focus on where we want to be rather than where we have been. Okay, so Violet Sky says, dang, I'm late again. Violet, I want you to stay after class. I want you to take some notes and all the rest. And the teachers still say things like that. I don't know. Anyway, it's good that you're here now anyway, Violet. Dr. Susan says, I wrote my story like Joseph Campbell's hero's journey recently and celebrated my recovery. It was wonderful. You say you wrote your story. I think that's interesting. Some people find something very cathartic and very powerful in telling their story, writing it down. Sometimes you don't have to do anything with it. Sometimes people want to, put it out there online. They want to do something with it. I always caution people, if you are going to do that, by all means, but bear in mind, some people can be very litigious, so. But there can be something powerful in putting your experiences, your thoughts, your feelings, and things like that down onto paper. It can be something very useful or something very, very helpful. It actually works the other way around, by the way. If you find yourself really worried about something, you're ruminating, you're thinking this terrible thing is going to happen. What do you say? It's going to be awful, and you're crippled with anxiety. Write down what it is you're afraid of. Go as far as you want, be as creative as you want. Whatever it is you fear is going to happen, you're going to end up living in a shopping mall surrounded by zombies or something. It's all your fault and everybody hates you. Be as disastrous as you want. Write down all these terrible things that you fear is going to happen. And then when you've done that, take that page, fold it up, put it in your back pocket, put it in the drawer. Do whatever you want. Put it under your pillow, under your mattress. Go back and read it later. A few hours later, a day later, a couple of days later, go back and read it and notice it doesn't have the power it had when it was in your head. Okay? It tends to lose its energy. It loses its power. I often say people have a head like a TARDIS. It's bigger on the inside. Once it's out there, once it's down on a page, you go back and you read it later, it loses its power, it loses its energy. So writing things down can be very useful. Okay, now where did we get to? Cannot reason with unreasonable people. Yeah, how do you reason with someone who is set out to be reasonable? How do you communicate with someone who has determined not to listen to you? How do you reach someone who has decided to not understand? How do you negotiate with selfish? When you start to realize those things, you stop trying. Okay, so where did we get to? Sharon says about EMDR, have to look back into that. Yeah, I'm not an EMDR therapist. I did do a video about it. Most of the info I got were from some friends and colleagues who practice it. I don't practice it myself, but some people have said that they find it really useful, really helpful. It's something I keep meaning to look into, to maybe do a bit of training on it. But like everything else, it's on my to-do list. Okay, where did we get to? Freud could be the new expert typist even without any thumbs. Yeah, I could just imagine him hitting the keyboard. Freud could surprise you. Freud constantly surprises me. Jay Nash says, I like the Enterprise props in the back. Wrath of Khan, 1982, my favorite movie. Wrath of Khan is the best Star Trek movie ever, and it works on so many levels. And the little Enterprise you see over my shoulder, that's the pride of my collection. And the reason it's the pride of my collection is because Santa Claus brought me that when I was 8 years old. That very one that very enterprise. And yeah, I've commanded that little ship on many a mission over the years. Yeah, she's a fine ship with a very dedicated and loyal crew. So where do we get to? Deepak, thank you so much. Thank you for your useful content. Thank you for your kind support. I really appreciate that. That's very generous of you. And Freud and I shall be enjoying sausages this week. I buy sausages for him and me. Actually, that's not a joke. He does eat sausages. Not all the time, but he does eat sausages a lot. If I'm cooking sausages, he usually gets a couple. Actually, whatever I'm cooking, he usually gets something of it as well. So that's not really. Let me see. I don't have a. I don't. Fallon says she doesn't have a dog. She has a parrot and run everything by her. She's a good judge of character. Okay. I try to run things past Freud. He just looks at me and then looks at the door and then looks at me and then looks at the door. And that's his signal. Are we going out for a walk or what? You know, he just does that all the time. Sometimes he'll go over to where my coat's hanging up because the lead hangs up beside the coat. And he'll go to that and then he'll walk back to me. He'll walk there and he'll walk back to me. And he just keeps doing that about 2 or 3 times. I think he's got me better trained than I have him trained. So, thinking about dogs is, I don't know much about cats, so I do remember there being a cat in the house when I was very young. But we always had dogs. And I remember, and what I've noticed still today, even with Freud, dogs have this curious way of always being able to sense your mood. They know when you need a walk. They know when you want to play or you need to play. They know when to leave you alone. They know when to just sit on the sofa beside you, maybe just rest their head on your lap or something. I always find that amazing. They always seem to know, well, dogs I've had anyway, they always seem to know what mood you're in. I think that's incredible. Yeah. Logic says, classic Doctor Who fan since 1977. The new show is not for me. I would agree with you, and I never thought I would hear myself say this, but when it comes to Doctor Who, I think it needs to end. I know it ended back in the 80s. I wasn't really bothered by it back then because I felt I'd maybe outgrown it. I'd stopped watching it. I stopped watching it after Colin Baker. I liked Colin Baker. But the new ones, I've watched it. I really liked. I liked Peter Capaldi. I thought he was really good. Got some crazy stories, but he's a very good actor. And I liked Matt Smith. I think he overplayed the buffoon, but he did still have some good stuff. I think where it has went wrong, people have a lot of different reasons why it has went wrong. My take on why it has went wrong, it's for the same reason Star Trek goes wrong. It's the same reason for a lot of things when they go wrong. When the show just becomes about itself, it's dying. It's lost. It's gone. It just becomes about itself. You know, it's not this wanderer who just stumbles upon things happening. He becomes the most important godlike person in the universe at one point. When things become just about themselves, even James Bond recently, the last Bond movie, as good as it was, whenever they just become about themselves, I think they're just on their last legs, and I think that's where Doctor Who is at the moment. So never thought I'd say that, but sure, there we go. Okay, where do we get to? Very happy Mondays. Mall zombies will never not be creepy or hilarious. Yeah. You can tell I grew up in the 80s. I was thinking of, was it Dawn of the Dead? Yeah, that old movie about them living in a shopping centre. Yeah. Where do we get to? Calm. Yeah, okay. About dogs and parrots, I must share this, that the time the hubby brought home a psychopath, it was the family dog that knew the character and tried to prevent his entrance through the front door. Now that's interesting. The dog picked up on the person's character. The dog sensed something. Now that's very interesting. So where do we get to? Dogs and cats use talking about screen. Three words, Mr. McGee. Oh, thank you. I'm not sure what it was I said, but thank you. I've been waffling a lot. As he says, I think communicating would work better if people knew how to be respectful, but I see many cannot. I don't know. I wouldn't like to think I'm a dying breed, and I don't want to sound narcissistic. I don't think good manners cost anything. I don't think it costs anything to listen to someone, to hear what it is they're saying. Well, bear in mind what I do for a living. But to actually hear what someone says, you don't have to agree with what they're saying. They've just shown a little bit of common decency. Good manners. I don't think they cost anything at all. You don't lose anything. But you see that many cannot. And yeah, I would agree. And I think, yeah, I don't know if it's just because I'm getting older and maybe like everybody, when they get older, they start to see things in the generation that comes up after them. Or if it's maybe social media has played in this, but I think people have lost things like nuance, context, and even polite curiosity. I think everybody's, and again, maybe it's just social media, the way that people behave on that. Yeah, just everybody seems to be rude. No, it's not true. Not everybody. The loudest people tend to be the rudest. Maybe that's the way of putting it. Okay. Communication, I think, works at its best when people actually listen, because yeah, you can go and say what you want if no one's listening to you. Doesn't matter how eloquent you are. So where do we get to? Very Happy Monday said cats are comparatively less demonstrative than dogs, or rather, their expressiveness is comparatively subtle. Furry friends are helpful healers. Yeah, I do know people. I don't know much about cats, as I say. I know people who have cats. And there was a cat in our house when I was young, maybe about, what was I? I might have been about 8 or 9, I think. We had a cat was around for a few years. But other than that, I don't know much about them. I know it kind of just did its own thing. It spent most of its time sitting in my mum's lap. I think maybe it took to her than any of the rest of us. But other than that, yeah, maybe it's just maybe they're just different. That being said, I'm sure the cat doesn't sort of like pace up and down and want you to take it out for a walk, get excited, if you take it out to the car or whatever. Where did we get to? John Smith says, interesting, John Smith. The only proper doctor was Tom Baker. I'm unanimous in that. Yeah, he would have been my doctor growing up. I was maybe about, what would I have been? I had been about 10, I think, when he left. I didn't really like Peter Davison, not at first. Kind of grew on me. Colin Baker, absolutely crazy outfit and really daft stories. But I really liked him. Now, I was a teenager by that time, and it was probably not cool to say that you watched Doctor Who. But Colin Baker was just so bombastic and loud and arrogant. I thought I really liked him. So the two Bakers, yeah. My favorite Doctor, just in case anyone's ever asking, anyone's curious, my favorite Doctor is the first one, William Hartnell. I was introduced to him years later, going back and watching it, and just to see how it all began and how his character changed from that first story in that first season right up to the last one where he's dealing with the Cybermen for the first time. Such a great character arc for someone. And yeah, I just think it's great. When you think of modern Doctor Who, you see them, they're screaming at the Daleks, I'm going to blow you out of the sky and all that. And then the first Doctor's just saying to them things like, oh, you poor misguided creature. So yeah, completely different world. Anyway, I'm supposed to be talking about narcissistic abuse healing, and I'm just talking about Doctor Who. Eddie Camping says, sorry I'm late, but this is a really good topic. I left a request on your channel last week and I didn't get to watch it because when you come on, it's midnight here, and I'm usually asleep. But if I'm awake and I know you're playing live, I'll put you on. So I haven't had a chance to catch up and listen, but I will be listening anyway. Anybody, if you like good music, listen to Lady Campion. I would sometimes put her on in the background when I'm like doing the laundry, washing the dishes, or stuff like that. Absolutely amazing channel. Some great music, absolutely wonderful voice. So yeah. Anyway, where did I get to? I bought a brown raincoat because of Doctor Who. I'll do you one better than that. What do you see this? I've got Capaldi's sonic screwdriver. Sad as that. But there we go. Where did I get to? Exploring the spectrum of healing. Yeah, healing looks different and for different people, a lot of different ways. Don't put a time limit on it, but certainly pay attention to the little changes and the different ways in which you are healing. Even little things like, we're talking about sci-fi tonight. Don't do a lot of disclosure, but I'm going to do it tonight. Previous relationship I was in, I wouldn't have been allowed to put that stuff out. Okay, this is my little man cave, my little room. I've got books over there. I've got lorries and tanks over there. I've got some photographs of my family up here, and I've got my printer and stuff, and I've got my collection and my Star Wars figures and all the rest of it. No, that wouldn't have been previously. That wouldn't have been entertained. So this is what I mean by living in defiance. Getting my own space and getting myself little cabinets, little shelves, and putting out the things that I like. Not only that, but actually going and buying myself some new ones. My little Eagle transporter from Space 1999. I've got the Battlestar Galactica die-cast model from the original 70s, things like that. Bought myself a sonic screwdriver. If you're not paying attention to those little things where you live in defiance, doing the things that weren't approved of, the things that were talked down, you go and you enroll in that course, you learn that new skill, you go and make friends with those people, you reconnect with people that you were maybe isolated from. If you're not paying attention to those little things, you might not notice that you are moving forward. And even what kind of time space that you might not have done that all in one go. But you might find that within a month you had changed your hairstyle, maybe got a haircut, started to grow it longer, whatever, changed its color. I'm dyeing my hair gray one at a time. It looks really good, doesn't it? You've changed your diet. You might want to start trying different kinds of foods. Maybe you want to start cooking stuff from scratch. You might find your taste in music changes. If you're not paying attention to those little things, you might miss how you are starting to move forward. So could be a couple of weeks, could be a couple of months, could be a year, but you'll find those little changes that happen throughout those periods. And back to Doctor Who, Colin Baker was a really good actor, saddled with horrible showrunner and the worst costume. Really soared in the second season. This is why I really like Colin Baker. When you see Colin Baker act, when you see him really get into something, when you see him shine, you don't notice the costume anymore. First season, the costume was just, it was sore on the eyes. But yeah, whenever you see him act his little heart out, doesn't matter what he's wearing, Yeah, that's why I like him. He is a really good actor. I've seen him in quite a few things. Let me get Very Happy Mondays, but a transcript for an imaginary broadsword. There can be only one. Highlander. Yeah, I remember that. A Frenchman played a Scotsman, and a Scotsman played an Egyptian who was Spanish. Yeah, odd movie, but a good one. Where do we get to? Lady Camping is, I was trying to figure out why my computer sound isn't working. I haven't been able to hear a thing since I came in. Oh, okay. This is different. Is the sound still there? Can people hear me? Oh, Lady Camping. Well, see, the thing is, Lady Campion, it wouldn't be the first time I have hit something and knocked the microphone off. It wouldn't be the first time I started a live stream and the microphone wasn't on in the first place. So when I hear something like that, so anyway, where did I get to? Spanish Peacock. Yeah, that was Sean Connery. That's right. Yeah. Where do we get to? Colin Baker did a one-off episode in Blake 7. Blake 7 is my favorite. I remember watching it as a kid, didn't really get it, but I revisited it during lockdown. Hadn't watched it in years, and I revisited it. And there are a few Duff episodes, and yes, they did have a budget of something like 37 pence, but it's got to be, it was way ahead of its time. And yes, Colin Baker is brilliant. And him and Paul Darrow, I believe, were friends. And even in Paul Darrow had a guest spot in one of Colin Baker's series, and you just see them trying to. What you cannot do is you cannot out Colin Baker. Colin Baker, you just cannot do it. And Paul Darrow, you can see him desperately trying to. But yeah, yeah, he was very good in that. So Lady and Count says, we all do that. I've been muted at the beginning of my stream many times, but this was all my issue. I can't imagine you going on to sing and the microphone being off. That would just be pure comedy. Sorry for laughing, but if you're singing, you might really want the microphone on. Okay, we're coming up to 10 o'clock. So yeah, I hope this evening has been useful for you. The reason I thought it would be useful were those three things that keep recurring, if you will. They keep recurring in the channel. What does it look like? What does it take? How long is it going to take? Everybody's different. I think a good place to start is maybe therapy. Educating yourself on the nature of the abuse, what happened and why it's happened and so on, but even recognizing our own part in it, because sometimes, and people, I know there's people out there saying, that's victim blaming. No, it is not. We had our responsibility too, because regardless of our motivation, we were given chances to someone who pissed away every bloody chance we give them. We did it sometimes hoping things would be better this time, things were going to be better this time. So it's not just understanding the nature of that person and why they behaved. Sometimes it's in therapy, we're looking at what was going on with us at the time in the hope of maybe bringing out the best in someone. How long is it going to take? Again, how long is a piece of string? What I would say is we never get back to where we were, but what we have is maybe more. As I say, we let go of those things that are holding us back, such as the hope of change, such as the hope of them doing this, such as the hope of whatever happening. We focus on ourselves. And what you find is we haven't lost anything. Those other parts of us start to become stronger. They start to become more galvanized. We can start to become more focused. We also recognize we can be a lot more compassionate for other people who are maybe going through the same kind of thing that we have been going through. There is something quite healing whenever we encourage and support others as well. If you think about it, actually, it's just come into my head. That could be one of the things the narcissistic person exploited. Okay. How many times do they present themselves as being weak and wounded and vulnerable, and you did the wrong thing, you said the wrong thing, and you triggered the wrong thing in them, and all the rest of it again, making you their scapegoat, dumping their shame onto you. When we're starting to heal, it's not that we have lost that, but we're starting to maybe use that in places where, as I said earlier, it's going to be reciprocated. People who appreciate it, people who thank you, and people who will encourage and support you as well. So it's like I say, we haven't lost anything. We just start to become a bit more galvanized. So tomorrow, I promised this last week, and I do apologize because it was a different video I put out. Tomorrow's video, I am looking at, and I'm still working on a title here, so maybe people can help. I was going to call it The Power of Stupidity, but that's not really the full thing. What I'm looking at is the Dunning-Kruger effect, but I'm looking at it, albeit I'm doing it briefly. I'm trying to look at it as a whole. A lot of people think the Dunning-Kruger effect is just whenever people overestimate themselves. Their confidence outweighs their competency. They think they're experts. They haven't a clue. They're sometimes it can be a bit arrogant. So I am addressing that part. I'm looking at their research, and I'm looking at why people can sometimes feel like that. I'm also going to be looking at it through the lens of whenever you meet a narcissistic person who maybe has a little piece of information about something and they think they are an expert. They, the sort of person that goes into hospital and they start to advise the surgeon on the best way to perform the operation, things like that. The deluded sense of superiority. But I'm also going to be looking at it from the other way around, because what they found was there's another aspect to it. And it's like an aspect of what's sometimes known as imposter syndrome. And that's when people actually underestimate themselves. They have a pretty good grasp of what they're doing. They might be good at what they're doing, but they doubt themselves. They think it's just luck. Or whatever it is. So so I'm going to be looking at Dunning-Kruger effect and looking at those three different aspects. The person who applies, or the person who auditions on a talent show, and they're the next big thing. They stroll out onto the stage. They think they're wonderful and they can answer the question so confidently, and they're just dripping with gorgeous. They think they're amazing. And then they start to sing and they sound like they're falling down the bloody stairs, So yeah, that kind of person. But then the other person who is good at what they do, they have a good grasp, they have a lot of experience, but they might doubt themselves. They might believe that whatever it is, it's just luck. They might believe that, well, if I can do it, anyone can do it. It's not that big a deal. So they're, as I say, they underestimate themselves. But I will also be looking at it through the lens of narcissism. The people who can talk with such arrogance and confidence about something they know nothing about, and they are able to convince others. Even if there's a real expert in the room that knows what it is, they're able to convince other people that the expert doesn't know what they're talking about. So I thought that would be an interesting topic. So that will be out tomorrow about 6:30. Still struggling for a title. I might just call it "What is the Dunning-Kruger Effect?" because it might be a bit cruel to call it something like "The Rise of the Stupid" or whatever. It's just that's whenever I typed in the YouTube search bar, because that's what it advises you to do when you're coming up with titles. Type in what you would think, and when I put in Dunning-Kruger, that's one of the things that came up, and I thought, oh, it's a bit harsh. But anyway, there I am waffling again. And Dr. Suzanne, thank you very much. Again, I really appreciate that. That's sausages for Freud and me this week. We're going to be overwhelmed with sausages. Thank you. That's very kind of you. Um, Jane Ash is. I've just seen it. Can I do a show on the show The Prisoner and how it relates to things people experience today? When you say The Prisoner, I'm guessing you mean the 60s TV series. Isn't it Patrick McGowan, I think, was in it? That's something I might need to revisit because I haven't seen that in many years. I am aware of it and I do know the concept of it, but um, yeah, I think there's a lot of things that are we see years ago that were coming up in fiction stories, sci-fi stories, even contemporary things of the day. And it's funny how these things seem to be playing out in real life today in different people's relationships, and you see it on the news, you see it in workplaces and so on. Yeah, The Prisoner. If nothing else, I'll definitely watch The Prisoner because, as I say, I haven't watched it in years. It might be good to revisit something like that. That's most of the stuff I watch on YouTube or old TV shows and things from when I was young, when I was a kid. But thank you for the suggestion. Prisoner. Okay. So, where do we get to? Yes. Don't mention arch narcissist Trump. I will not mention him. I did tell a joke about Trump once. I try not to do political things. I try to stay out of politics, though I did have a discussion with someone recently who's written a book about woke people, the woke mind. I did try to give a little bit of pushback, but I probably did it as a therapist as opposed to an interviewer, so it doesn't come across as pushback. But anyway, yeah, other than that, I try not to be political. I would consider myself to be politically homeless. I don't see anybody out there worth voting for, but that's just me. But I made a joke on a video. I can't even remember what the video was, but I was talking about what do you call it? I was talking about what the hell was I talking about? Whatever it was I was talking about. I'd mentioned Area 51, and I'd said that I can disprove. I can prove that the whole thing about Area 51 and aliens is false. It's only it's a myth. It's a conspiracy theory. It's not real. It doesn't exist. And I said I could prove that with just one question. And the question was, if there were really aliens in Area 51 and would captured spaceships and things like that, my joke was, do you think Donald Trump would be able to keep quiet about it? I thought it was funny. I thought it was harmless, but I did get a bit of grief. So I don't know if there's any Trump supporters or not out there. I don't mean to offend your president, if that's the case. I just thought it was a bit of harmless fun, but I did get a bit of grief for it. Where did I get to? I don't even know how I got on to this. Very happy Mondays. Thank you as well. Thank you. That's very happy Mondays. Dunning-Kruger, Rise of Stupidity. So you're agreeing with that title. See, that's the thing. It doesn't quite I think it doesn't quite capture it, though, because I'm also looking at people who underestimate themselves, those who struggle with things like imposter syndrome. They find it hard to internalize that they're actually good at what they do. That was the other side of the Dunning-Kruger. It's those who didn't do well believed they had done really well in the tests, and those who did do really well were convinced they hadn't done so well. So there are those two aspects to it. But yeah, the Rise of the Stupid does just sound a bit odd. Anyway, Jane Smith says, I know many Trump supporters who would laugh at that. Well, that's good. I mean, I didn't mean any harm by it. Let me see. When I was younger, I would have been interested. I couldn't tell you how much politics bores me these days. It really does. I don't even know who's who anymore in some of the stuff they talk about. But anyway, enough of me. Maybe I'm just getting too old and grumpy. Anyway, as always, thanks for joining me. It's been really good chatting with you all. I hope that you find this interesting. even going into the realms of talking about science fiction and so on. My favorite TV shows. So yes, the video will be out tomorrow. It'll be out at 6:30. I am trying to maybe get something out for Wednesday as well. Because a question had come up and I haven't done it yet. God forgive me, I haven't. People ask, I ask people to give me topic suggestions, and it takes me so long to get them done. I feel really bad. It's where I wish I had a team around me. Yeah, and I'd done a video a while ago on obsessive compulsive personality disorder. And someone had asked about the same way as I'd done videos about a partner with borderline or a partner with narcissism or whatever, if I would do the same, the different things that might come up in a relationship with someone who has obsessive compulsive personality disorder. So I do have sort of like most of that done, and I'm hoping to maybe, if I don't get it out this week, it definitely will go out next Monday. But I thought that might be an interesting topic as well. Other than that, I will be back next Sunday to waffle more inane stuff to see what people find helpful and interesting. Thank you for joining me. I hope, as always, I've already said it, but I'll say it again. I do hope you find this interesting. I do hope you find this helpful. If you could, I would really appreciate it. If you haven't already, if you could like the video, maybe leave a wee comment of some description, because it does help it get out there. Other people can get to watch it too, and it helps out my channel immensely. I really appreciate it. So thanks everybody for joining me. As always, have a good week and look after yourselves. Take care. Bye now.